Welcome to the Climb Podcast, where we are diving into taboo topics and redefining the rules for women of color leaders. Get ready as we share the stories and amplify the voices of extraordinary women of color. From navigating workplace challenges to celebrating triumphs, on this podcast, we've got you covered. So buckle up and join us as we embark on today's empowering journey. Welcome to the Climb Podcast, where we empower women of color in the pursuit of leadership and managerial roles. I'm your host, Felicia Smith, the founder of The Climb, a 501c3 organization that's committed to increasing the number of women of color in leadership and managerial positions. And each week on this podcast, we dive into topics that have been mystified, taboo, or just often not talked about. And we break them down to make sure that we are imparting in the next generation of women of color in their journey. And today we'll do the same. We have an amazing topic. Our topic for today is defining success on your own terms. And of course, I can't do this by myself, and I'm super excited about this guest. Dr. Taharee Jackson is here with us. Welcome, Dr. Taharee. I'm going to read a little bit about her bio, but that's it. We're going to really jump into her journey because I find it fascinating. And when we're talking about really defining success on your own terms, I think Dr. Jackson really is the epitome of that. And so I think you're going to enjoy this podcast. So let me read her bio. Dr. Jackson is currently the Senior Executive Leadership Instructor, coach, and curriculum developer. She supports the highest ranking leaders and workforce contributors at all levels in advancing their skills in inclusive leadership, transformative best practices, and emotionally intelligent tone setting. I love that in the workplace. Dr. Jackson is the founder and tone setter in chief of the Global Inclusion Academy, LLC. As a veteran equity, inclusion, and accessibility expert consultant for more than 21 years. Dr. Jackson also is the lead equity specialist at the Equity Literacy Institute. She's the former senior advisor for diversity, inclusion, equity, and accessibility, and deputy chief of strategy and integration at the Defense Intelligence Agency. Prior to her role at the Department of Defense, Dr. Jackson was the inaugural Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Belonging, and Accessibility Officer at the American Institute of Physics. She's also served as the expert consult to the President and inaugural Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Program Manager at the National Defense University, which I graduated from. Dr. Jackson joined the federal service after a 17-year career in academia, most recently at the University of Maryland College Park. There, she serves as a professor, a teacher, an educator, and a researcher of minority and urban education in the Department of Teaching and Learning, Policy and Leadership. Dr. Jackson holds the Society for Human Resource Management, the SHRM, Inclusion Workplace Culture Credential, and is a certified trainer of diversity trainers. She's also a certified federal equal employment opportunity counselor and a certified alternate dispute resolution mediator. And she is certified in sexual harassment prevention and sexual harassment response coordinator and victim advocate. She holds a magna cum laude from Harvard University in psychology and Spanish, which, pause, you and my aunt share something. She got the exact same degree from Harvard. She has a master's of education from the Harvard Graduate School of Education in Human Development and Psychology and PhD from Emory in multicultural education, adult and teacher education, and urban education reform. She has conducted grant funding research programs aimed at understanding how members of empowered groups become allies and accomplices for minoritized people. Her studies on the development of allyship and advocacy in the urban educators, and her research on the efforts of exceptional leadership on the retention of the culturally competent employees and inclusive leaders have been influential in academia and across multiple military, medical, corporate, federal, and intelligence sectors. Dr. Jackson recently located to Lake Norman, North Carolina from Alexandria, Virginia. In Northern Virginia, she enjoyed volunteering at the Walter Reed National Military Center, the United Service Organization, USO Warrior and Family Center, and with young children and Spanish speakers in her church community. Dr. Jackson enjoys fellowshipping at Elevation Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, and in her spare time loves traveling, hiking, biking, kayaking, standing up paddleboarding, and picnicking next to her father's resting place at Arlington National Cemetery. Let's welcome Dr. Jackson. Oh, we have so many things in common. Our family has so many things in common. I was saying my aunt, Dr. Archie Hudson, went to Harvard too for psychology, and someone that I super enjoy talking to. Welcome to the podcast again.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So this topic in itself, often when we think about success, we think about you have to be in a high level position, you have to do this thing. And when you have done that, you've reached the pinnacle and you have been successful. But talking to you and reading more about you, I realized that a lot of us need to realize that there are so many ways to be successful. So I really want to start off by you just telling us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. That was a great introduction. You made me sound so infinitely more cool than I actually am. So thank you so much for that. And just thank you so much for the opportunity to share. If one person benefits from this and is blessed by these words, then it will have been worth it. So thank you for the opportunity. But I think the most important thing sometimes that you can't gather from my bio is that I march to the beat of my own drum. I originally actually went to Harvard to be a pediatric neurosurgeon because I thought that, my mom was in the medical field. My dad actually was a home health nurse, right? Almost until the day he died. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go on. I'm a pediatric neurosurgeon. I'm going to study psychology and neuroscience, and I'm going to do all these things. And also, I'm from a poor family, so it's the money, right? Like it's the money and it's the fulfillment. And when I got there, I was pre-med, had the same chemistry textbook that I had just had at my little honors high school, and I enjoyed it. But I just thought, no, I think I want to study psychology, and I want to work with kids, but I don't want them to have brain tumors. I can work with children who aren't terminally ill. So I actually got my magna cum laude bachelor's degree, stayed for a master's degree, and became a preschool teacher, a straight up urban preschool teacher, because I thought I'm going to put these kids on a trajectory of lifelong learning. This is where I want to be. Nobody has a brain tumor. I'm not having to perform surgery. And so I have always chased happiness and not money, but my gifts and talents have accelerated my career, and my gifts and talents have made room for me in higher order, positions, right? So I was a preschool teacher for several years, and then I became a professor of education. I was actually a teacher educator. So that's what launched my 17-year career. Actually, I worked during the day as a teacher, and then I worked as an adjunct professor at night. That's how I got started. And then I eventually went back and got my PhD and became a teacher educator. Then when I had a health crisis when I was a professor, but 17 years is a long time to be a professor. So, that's more than a college try. So I had been fulfilled by that. But I decided, I'm going to do something that I thought was going to be a little bit easier, that was going to be less of a commitment. So I went to the National Defense University, just under, a year-long contract, worked directly with the president because I had had a concurrent career as a business consultant. Right? I had always worked with CEOs and board chairmen and VPs of diversity because diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and accessibility were my expertise, right? I studied minority urban education. I worked in urban schools, and I studied the development of cultural competence in teachers and in leaders, right? So all of that was just sort of, concurrent. And so I went to NDU, and then I ended up finding myself in the intelligence community after that. That's when I joined the Defense Intelligence Agency, worked across agencies. I've worked at the CIA. I've done things with the FBI. I've done things at NCIS, NGA. And so I just found myself every time I would get a job, I would say, God, what could be more than this? What could be better than this? And I
I
just
love
kept
it.
pursuing fulfillment and happiness, and the money came, right? I mean, by the time I ended, my career, I was a deputy chief and a senior advisor, very, very senior leadership roles, and I hadn't stepped on anybody. I maintained my relationships with people. I maintained my authenticity, and the money came, right? But
Yeah.
it was my gifts that made room for me, and I
Yes.
wasn't chasing and trying to desperately
Yeah.
climb like a ladder. So I want people to know that I have always chased happiness, and the money has come. Yeah.
I love that. To your point, your gifts, and I love that your gifts will make room for you. Like, and that, and if you're defining success by your gifts, then to your point, you're already successful. But oh, I love your story, and I'm curious. It seems like you've had a lifelong journey of learning. Like that's been super important to you, but not just learning, but your ability to be able to give that back. I mean, you got two amazing degrees from Harvard, and you said, "I'm gonna go back to the schools and start from the smallest kids, because that's actually where you start. You get a lot of return on that one,
Yeah.
and
Day
then
one
begin
of
to
day one. Yes.
yes. How did you decide when you were ready to do the transition? I know you said you had some little health challenges, but how did you decide, like, I'm gonna stop with preschoolers, I'm gonna move into like the government? What was your decision apparatus there?
Yeah, so when I transitioned from preschool to from public school teaching, literally public school teaching, to being a professor. That was in some ways monetary, because
Okay.
I thought, okay, again, I couldn't sustain being a full-time teacher during the day. I just was never going to be. I actually couldn't pay off my Harvard student loans. Like that was the
Yeah.
problem. My student loan payments were at one point $1,750, and that was I didn't even
Wow.
make that in a month. So in some ways it was monetary just because I didn't inherit any intergenerational wealth. And sometimes we
Mhm.
have to do what we have to do, right? But I
Absolutely.
also, I'm always thinking about the fundamentals. So we would get these teachers who came into the schools that had really poor attitudes toward children of color, children who were economically exploited, children who were experiencing homelessness or whatever it was. And I thought, who's teaching the teachers? Where are we getting
I
these
know
teachers
that's right.
from? Wait a minute, how are we recruit? Wait a minute, and what
Yes.
the best teachers leave because I'm watching these wonderful teachers exit like a revolving door, and I'm watching all these subpar mediocre teachers stay here for 20 and 30 years. Like, how do we reverse that? So I'm famous. My students used to say when I was a professor, that's how I have questions, right? Like, so I started questioning teachers, and teacher quality. So I was not only curious and inquisitive about how to create a better teaching force, but also how to remedy, some of these very real things that I was seeing in schools, like racism and classism and sexism. Girls sent home for wearing, what leggings, and boy, I mean, it was
Yeah.
strange to me, the inequity, right? So that's, that of course is the foundation of my DEI expertise. But then when I was a professor, you get to a point in your career where I always say, if I can't give you my best, I need to go do something else. And
That's
so
good.
I had a health challenge. I had a gigantic, tumor that had to be remedied. I had some health challenges, attached to that. So I thought, okay, like I said, I'm going to do something that maybe is less stressful. And it was not less stressful joining the Department of Defense, but it was
I was gonna say.
yeah, it was, I don't know, my calculus was not I had never worked in federal government. I had worked for the state, I had worked for local government, but I didn't know what it was like to work at the DOD. But
Me neither, so I understand.
oh yeah, it's intense. It is
Yeah.
intense, but it was intense in a good way because now your mission is about national security, and specifically for me, it was about leadership and changing the culture and the climate of an organization that was training the next generation of military leaders. And you know that
Yeah.
because you have a degree from that institution, so you
Yeah.
know how important that leadership is. So again, I was pursuing something, not only logistically based on the health challenge, but I believed in the mission because I believe in people and I believe in leaders. years. And I had learned from my research on leadership in as an academic, again, remember I told you I'm obsessed with retention and attrition. So I
Yeah.
was researching how to make the best educators stay in the profession, stay in their grades, stay in particular schools, just stay in the classroom, right? And what I learned is that the most salient factor for getting the most high quality, high integrity, hardest working people to stay in their positions was leadership. Right. That's why I started calling them tone setters in chief, because tone setters in chief determine what is acceptable here, what toxic behaviors are unacceptable here, and how we are going to do this mission. So I became an accidental researcher of leadership, and then I carried that into the federal government, and that's what was so helpful there. So I know it's unlikely to have
Wow.
a school teacher working in the intelligence community, but when you become an expert on leadership and empathic leadership and emotionally intelligent tone setting, it is valuable everywhere.
It is. I love your arc, your journey. To your point, you may have been for some other reasons, but it all worked together. So I love that.
Yeah.
So we're going to switch into our first segment, which is called Somebody Should Have Told Me. And on this segment, we talk about all the things we wish we knew going into our careers. And particularly, I want to hear from Dr. Jackson, like, what are some of the things you wish someone would have told you before, when you were in high school or in college that you know now for sure?
You know what? There was a part of me in high school that wanted to be like a CEO, like a leader. Like I knew I had leadership in me. I was a natural leader, and I was like, I want to be a boss. But all of the bosses that I could see were white men, right? And older white men at that, and not necessarily like nice ones, right? Like I grew up at the time of Apple, so I was trying to learn about Steve Jobs, and I was trying, I went to Harvard, so I was trying to learn more about Mark Zuckerberg and what he was doing with our just little Facebook, but all of my models were like these white men who were who could be perceived as gruff. And I thought,
Yeah.
when I become a lady boss, I'm going to be nice, and I'm going to be relational. I'm not going to be transactional. I'm going to invest in people, because if you take care of people, the mission takes care of itself. If you take
Sure.
care of people, the profit takes care of itself. So I decided back then I'm going to be kind of the Jacinda Ardern prime minister model of leadership, and I am not going to step on anybody. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus. Nobody is my competition, right? I'm not the competition. I'm the standard. Okay. I am educated.
I love that.
I am competent, and I'm not here to prove anything, but I am here to bring my most authentic self. So I wish somebody had told me that, like, my mantra was, if loving people is wrong and if prioritizing people is wrong, then I don't want to be right.
All right.
I don't want to be right. I wish somebody had told me that that was okay. I had people
Yeah.
say, you got to look out for yourself. Make sure you hit these benchmarks. Make sure if you work on a collaborative project, you take this a degree of credit so you could put it on your performance assessment form. And I was just like, that doesn't even sound right. Like, that violates my spirit. That irritates who I am. So I always invested in people. And from a very young age, I ended up getting leadership roles, not because I was mean and nasty and trying to step on folks, but because I was kind. And that had been my experience in school all through K through 12. I had such great friends. I had always been a super nerd, always a straight A student, but I was always kind. And my best friend and I would have worn t-shirts that said, of course you can sit with us, right? Because we
Aw.
were like, we were friendly. So I was never popular because I was mean and nasty and out for myself and self-aggrandizing. I was popular because I was kind. And so, that's how you become the class president. That's how you become the cheerleader. So I took that into my professional life. And I've always had people, whether I was in academia or whether I was in the intelligence community, people say, well, where are you going to go? Because I want to go work for you. I don't know where you're going next, but I want to come with you. And I've had people actually come with me and travel with me to other jobs. And now that I'm an entrepreneur, people regularly call me saying, hey, do you have anything for me? I'm going to retire in a couple of years. Can I work for you? And that, to me, I wish somebody had told me that you can be relational, you can invest in people, you can love people, and you can be powerful. That is what I've learned. Yeah.
No, that's phenomenal. And to your point, that actually is one of the indicators of success when people want to follow you. It's not that they have to follow you because they're like, hey, I want to follow you. I want to work for you. I know that you're going to take care of us. I know that you're going to care about us. Yeah, those are definitely targets for success. But I will tell you, one thing I'm going to put on a bumper sticker and make sure I say it the right way is, I am not your competition. I am the standard.
I'm the standard. Yeah, no imposters here. No imposter. There is no mediocrity in me. There is nothing subpar about me. I have done all the things. I'm not perfect and I don't know everything, but I know I have a right to be here, right? And be even
I
more
love
right
it.
than some of these other folks, right? So I am not the competition, and you are not my competition. We win more, we go farther together, right? So as soon as you learn how not to take credit for anything and to make sure that your team feels good and, give people gift cards and take them out to lunch and make them feel seen, it makes you a better boss and it makes you more successful. Not stepping on folks and backbiting and throwing folks under the bus, because there's enough leadership for all of us. There's room
Yeah.
on the bus for all of us, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not the competition. I'm the standard, and we're all going to get in here and be successful together.
I love that. So for the leader who's in the workplace, the woman of color who probably is practicing the opposite, how does she relearn? What are some things she can do to relearn? Where she's been taught that, she has to compete and she has to like be better than everyone else. Like how do we teach them how to relearn the fundamentals of just taking care of people and being a good person, being kind?
Yeah, so selflessness in professional workplaces is everything, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to get too spiritual, but I do identify as a Christian, and I
Mhm.
believe in the law of reaping and sowing, right?
I agree.
I have sown some seeds literally when I was a child, right? Whether it was taking care of my family or taking care of my nephews or whatever it is. And those seeds have buried and taken root and come to fruition to the point that they are blessing me now, right? In my 40s.
Mhm.
So the one thing that I want to impart on women or any leader of any kind is be magnanimous, be loving, invest in people, and sow good seeds. And even if those same people step on you or talk about you, or you don't get a promotion, or you don't get a C-suite, or you don't get something, your morality is not for sale, right? And your
Love
conscience
it.
needs to be clear at night when you lie down. So what you get as a result of sowing good seeds is going to be far more valuable. And right, you don't have to give up the success, because like I said, I have always prioritized people, whether it was I was leading teachers or students, and I'm trying to advocate for students or trying to advocate for intelligence officers or leaders. I have always prioritized people, and those relationships have come back to bless me, even if they didn't bless me in that moment, right? Because we're impatient. Especially if you're in a corporate environment, or even a military environment, right? They give you times by which you have to promote, right? So
Yeah.
it's a pressure cooker situation, and I'm not unaware of that. But what I want to say is, if you take time to build your professional fortress around being kind and empathic and emotionally intelligent, knowing your team members' birthdays, knowing that they have children, knowing that somebody has to leave every Tuesday at 4:30 because their child has baseball practice, when you take interest in the smallest details of people's lives and make them feel like the only person on your team or the only person in the room, those seeds will come back and bless you, and they'll bless you in your evaluations. People will mention your name in rooms that you were never meant to be in, right?
Yeah.
It's because they carry this story of you and your persona, which is one of empathy and kindness, and not some person that they're trying to run and get away from. So I believe in the law of reaping and sowing. I have been reaping a harvest ever since I left my federal career, last year. I've been reaping a harvest from my academic contacts. And so I would encourage people to sow good seeds and be patient, because your harvest will come.
Love it, love it. Let's talk a little bit about your transition. So we talked about your transition from academia to the department. Let's talk about tell me a little bit about your transition of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, again, I have had no bad jobs, right? I have
Yeah.
God has been so good to me. I have had no bad jobs. I think I've only ever quit one job, and that was because of micromanagement. Again, poor leadership, right? So I
Yeah.
tell that story later. But I truly, I spent in the intelligence community. I spent the longest time at the department, at the Defense Intelligence Agency, and I enjoyed it. But I developed because of my long hours in a skiff, right, working in a room where you can't have windows, things like that. I would stay overnight sometimes. We would have to make epic sprints and do extraordinary things because, again, when you believe in your mission, you will stay at your desk overnight, right? And get it done. And my boss used to joke that I had a cot under my desk that I would pull out at night. And I'm like, okay, okay, that's interesting. I don't have a cot, but I do stay here overnight sometimes. So I actually developed some health issues, right? Just sciatica, some disc herniations, just from abusing my body and sitting, right? So after my 30 years of public federal service or public service, I was able to get my the remainder of my student loans forgiven. And so that meant that I could finally work as a private contractor, right? Because I had to work 30 years as a public servant to get, a lot of those Harvard student loans and some of the Emory student loans forgiven, right? So I became a private contractor and I went over to the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, loved it. But my body could not get used to the sedentary work, right? When you work in a classified environment, you have to work in an office, right? You can't do that stuff from home. You have to commute. So I actually bought a house closer to the city so my commute would be less. But my body just, and so on the last day when I was at NGA, I couldn't feel my right leg and I couldn't feel my right arm. I was actually literally paralyzed, and it scared me in a way that even when I had a tumor, I didn't know it was cancerous, right? Even if some of my prior health emergencies did not compare to just not being able to feel a side of my body. And so I went to the doctor, all three of them, so neurologist, a primary care physician, chiropractor, they all said, unless you have a right arm and a right leg to donate, you have to quit your job. You have to stop working in an office and you have to stop doing sedentary work. So that was my last day of work. I had been renovating my house. I rented it out and I said, you know what? I'm going to get a virtual job and I'm going to live by some water. So I was either going to move to the beach or a lake, and I moved to Lake Norman, which is about 30 minutes north of Charlotte. I had always loved that area. Davidson's very lovely. Cornelia is very lovely. And so I moved to the lake and I kept my job as a federal contractor because they wouldn't let me go. Again, remember we
Oh,
talked
that's
about,
awesome.
yeah. So the contract that I was on was ending and I was getting a new job and I was going to stay in DC and be a federal contractor. And when I told them that I had this health emergency and I just couldn't go to the office and sit there. They said, okay, well, we're gonna make you virtual. So you still will work for us, but you can live wherever you want because we don't get resumes like yours and we don't deal with people like you very often. So we will make room for you, right? We will make room for you. So I got a virtual job. And then I thought, you know what? I have enough expertise in leadership to be a leadership coach. I have enough leadership experience doing career counseling. I'm especially good at helping people do mock interviews, right? And helping people prepare because sometimes we women, we lose confidence and we become diffident. So I actually, through the Global Inclusion Academy, I became a coach, an executive leadership coach, in addition to my federal contracting. Now, the other part of what I do at Lake Norman is that my creative talent is interior design and home staging. So I started a whole business around interior design, home staging. I'm really great at renovation and things like that. And I just finished staging a house in South Carolina. And I have a rental, still in DC. So I divide my time between senior executive leadership, counseling, facilitation, and instructing and curriculum design and interior design, because that's what it means to be successful to me at this point in my life. We only get one precious life, and I'm in my 40s. So I'm going to spend half my time doing the thing that I have to do to pay the bills, but I'm going to spend the other half of my time, exercising my creative talent. So that's how
I love that. That's awesome. And although you had to pivot because of the reason, it was the right time and place. And so now you're like living your purpose in so many areas. And if I don't forget, I'm going to say it on the podcast, I have a mentee that I definitely have to introduce you to because she's very much interested in interior design.
Okay.
Yes. So let's go into our second segment is Truth Is. And I think you've already dropped some truths. But tell the audience what you know for sure is true about success in all of your transitions and journey. What do you know is true about success?
What I know about success, and again, I've experienced success in a bunch of different ways, right?
Or hack. Yes.
So listen, not to toot my horn, but it's like, no, I know what it means to have a big old salary and a
Uh-huh.
$1 million home and to be able to
Yeah.
travel to the Maldives and stay in an overwater bungalow. I know what
Yeah.
it's like to have a tight listen, but I've also experienced success this past year. And this is what this past year has taught me because this has not been the most lucrative year, right? I've got these medical bills, right, from my paralysis and my back issues. I did not replace my DC income. I actually halved it, really. I sort of cut it in half. And so I don't have my DC salary. But let me tell you what I do know about success based on this past year. Slow mornings is success, right? When you get to wake up when you want to wake up and decide where you
Oh,
want to be and what time, okay?
I
Going
live for those
to
days.
going to Goodwill in the middle of the day. That's success, right? I remember a time when I would have to cancel doctor's appointments, like vital doctor's appointments, because what was pressing at the DOD, if they meant close of business, they meant close of business, right? And when you work in the intelligence community, I used to say in academia, well, thing about deadlines is that, if you don't meet the deadline, no one dies. No, actually, when you work at the Department of Defense, somebody might die, right? If you don't meet your deadline, somebody might actually die. So what I've learned is that slow mornings and going to Goodwill in the middle of the day and attending to my life, that is success. By the time I left DIA, I had to have an RDO, which is like a regular day off, because I needed one day in the week where I could go to the doctor, pay my bills, go pick up. Like it became too much to manage my life, right? So if
Yeah.
you feel like your idea of success is working 80 hours a week and never being with your kids or your husband. Oh, by the way, and I was single the whole time I was in DC. Right? Didn't have time. Moved to Lake Norman, ended up having a great, relationship there because I had time. So what
Yeah.
I know about success is it's about schedule autonomy. Right? Not
Yeah.
having to be anywhere every day. It's about wanting what you have and not necessarily having everything you want. Right? I would love to have $1 million more in the bank. I would love to have 4 or 5 more rental properties, but I have what I have and I love what I have. I
Yeah.
lived on Lake Norman for a reason. Being able to get up and walk around the lake and have peace and bike and kayak and stand up paddleboard, all those things that you read at the beginning, that is peace. And so what I've decided is that I have to protect my peace at all costs. I had a lot of money in DC. I had a big house in DC. I had multiple cars in DC, but I had no rest and I had no peace. Right. So I just want to encourage people. It is okay. You can do it both. You can do it all, right? You can have a successful career. Sometimes people do that and then they take that money and they go and do other things. But sometimes people say, you know what? They do what I did and they say, I want off the hamster wheel. I don't want to
Yeah.
sit on 95 anymore for 2.5 hours, one way to work and one way to back. I don't want to eat TV dinners because I have no time to cook. And I don't want to not be in relationships and not be able to attend to my relationships because I'm stuck in a skiff for 16, 18 hours a day, right? There is more to life than hustle culture. Right. And hustling means something different. I've always had multiple jobs. I've always had a side business. But now I'm at the point in my life where my financial needs are not as great because I live in a place that's about 80% cheaper than DC, right? I still have
Mhm.
that house in Alexandria and I still, have my federal contracts, but I don't really need that big, six-figure salary that I had. I don't need it. I don't because that didn't make me happy. It actually made me sick and it made me paralyzed
Mhm.
and it disturbed my peace. So that's what I know about
Lovely.
success. Slow
I
morning,
love that. Well, you know what? I don't even have any more truths to answer. You get all the truth.
all the truth, all the things.
All the truth wrapped up in one. And so I'm going to go into our final segment, which is called Another Rung Mended. And it's really based on the research around women of color trying to climb the corporate ladder and that rung being broken. Today, we're going to mend that rung. And you've already actually given us some things, some nuggets. I mean, you've given us a lot of nuggets. But what is one thing you want to leave the audience with? You want to leave the ladies with thinking and remembering from this episode?
You know what? So one thing that I've learned from this year is that when I interview for something, because I still, obviously need a job, right? So I have to have something to pay the bills. So I've been interviewing all year and, just trying to make sure that I put myself out there and have something that kind of grounds my finances. But when I'm interviewing, I have shifted and reframed from, oh, I really need this. I really want this. Let me see how I can mold myself to, are you good enough for me?
I love it.
Because I know who I am, right? I'm just at a point in my life where I am going to be a bright, brilliant addition to your organization. No matter what you do, no matter what you do, I can learn anything. I have 2 degrees from Harvard and a PhD, right? You are going to get what you pay for and so much more. But the question is, are you toxic? Right? Are you
Mhm.
going to have a lack of work life balance that violates who I am? Are you going to tolerate toxic leaders who speak, talk down to me and who are abrasive and gruff and obstinate for no reason? And that's the behavior you reward, right? So for
Yeah.
now, I interview for jobs, but I'm interviewing you too, right? Because I know my value and I know my worth and I know the value of my contributions and my time. So I think sometimes, especially whether we work in federal government or whether we work in the corporate world, we are so desperate, to see it how we can just get our foot in the door and what we can do for them, right? Because we women are selfless anyway. We are impact. We're always looking to give more than what we're looking to receive. But at this point, my next organization, you are going to have to match my energy, right? As the young people say,
Yeah, I love it.
pass the vibe check, right? Because I know what it's like. And I'm not saying that the DOD is toxic. I'm not saying, working in the intelligence community, it's actually very rewarding, right? I enjoyed it, right? I loved it. But at this point in my life, I do need more peace. And I do need a higher standard for leadership wherever I go and decide to lend my talents. So I want women to not be nervous. I want them to remember their value, to remember their worth. Yes, they're interviewing you, but you're interviewing them too. Yeah.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. Dr. Jackson, I so enjoyed this. In some ways, you're speaking to me. Oh, I love this. Tell the audience how they can find you, connect with you, all the things.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. So I'm going to launch websites this year, but for now, LinkedIn is the best place. You can go to LinkedIn, Taharee Jackson. You can actually Google me and lots of things will come up. You can read my articles on Medium. You can find me even on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, not as much. I've got to hire a new social media manager, but LinkedIn is actually the best place. And thank you for, letting me say that because if you need coaching, if you have something for me, if you need your home redone, I have lots of different things that I could offer. So please reach out to me on LinkedIn. And then, Felicia, I will follow up with you about websites that are forthcoming.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you again so much, Dr. Jackson. We really enjoy you. We'll have you back again because there's some topics I've been thinking about that you could probably address for us also. But thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, make sure that you continue to keep striving and keep climbing. Thanks for tuning into the Climb Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on wherever you listen to podcasts. For updates and behind-the-scenes content, make sure you're following us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Join the Climb. Until next time, keep climbing and keep thriving, sis. See you next episode.